Could you pull the trigger of a gun knowing that the decision that you make will have a permanent effect on your life and everybody in the lives around you? Today in America, people believe that police officers make decisions based on a racial bias, when in fact they rely on years of training and experience to make split-second decisions in the moment, not on any racial bias that you may think that they have. And how do I know this? Well, for one, I'm going to be a police officer after my time here at BYU, but I've also grown up in a family that is almost entirely law enforcement and corrections. My father worked for 20 years as a juvenile corrections officer with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. My uncle spent over 20 years as an Albuquerque police officer, as well as a homicide detective, and now runs a very successful private investigation company with clients such as Nike, New Era, Gucci, the state of New Mexico, city of Albuquerque, etc. My aunt was a Chicago police officer for over 20 years, one of the toughest departments in the country to work for. My cousin is a prisoner transport officer with the city of Albuquerque right now on that police department, and the list could go on in corrections, parole officers, civilian employees, etc. I'm going to show you the best way to learn things about police officers, and that's with real world examples. So all my points are going to be made through real world examples. We examined every use of force case involving the police over recent years. They all involve two things: a violation of the law and disobeying police orders. The solution to that is simple. If you don't want force used against you, don't break the law. Listen to what the police say. A great example of this is a case from when I was in high school of a man named Michael Brown. Michael Brown committed a felony strong-arm robbery, and then when the police stopped him for jaywalking, he proceeded to punch the police officer who was sitting in his car multiple times and then reach for his gun. And everybody wonders why he got shot. If he had done one of two things, it all would have been avoided. If he either didn't commit robbery, or if he had just done what the police officer asked him to do and not walk in the street. Now, everything that the police do is made on a second-by-second basis. Situations can change from second to second, and that's how decisions are made. You have your entire life to judge a situation and the actions made by the individual in the situation. The officer involved only has seconds to make a lifelong decision, and once that decision is made, there is no going back on it, and the consequences will be life or death for those involved. I'm going to show you a video example of this from the Duncanville Police Department.
A 17-year-old is alive today because of a judgment call made by a Duncanville police officer who thought the teenager had a gun. He did have a gun, but it was a BB gun, and the officer didn't know it. This all happened Saturday, as Fox 4 Sean Rab reports. What would have been a horrible tragedy, like others seen across the country, was avoided by a split-second judgment call.
911, accept the emergency. Yes, ma'am. I'm here at this 67 at this 7-Eleven, and this young boy, one guy was blaze hooded.
Call came out, then I started headed north on Copperville.
16-year Duncanville officer Ben Luna first to respond. The call continued.
Listen to me. They just walked across the street. This young boy is walking around with a big gun shooting.
And the caller was still looking at him. This is where I made contact with the three male subjects.
As he drives up, look at the kid in the gray right of your screen.
Looks back, sees the officer. What was that move at his waistband? But that's what law enforcement we call a furtive gesture, and it's highly concerning, particularly given the comments on this call.
Luna exits his squad car yelling commands.
Get your hands up now! Get your hands up now! Get on the ground! Get on the ground now! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
The trio not obeying commands, and Luna says he's thinking
They're fixing to either pull the gun out, or they don't really care what I'm saying.
he says it's a fake gun, but Luna's wondering.
He's just trying to distract me looking at him, and these two could pull out a weapon. I'm not for sure.
Your heart's pumping now.
Yes, it is.
Hurd says as the teen approaches, though hands are up, the officer's at a disadvantage because action always beats reaction.
even though the officer has his gun drawn, he's on target. If this man chooses from this position to draw and fire, he can draw and fire before the officer can see that, perceive that, and stroke the trigger.
Finally, the kid in the gray follows instructions and goes to the ground. The picture at the top is what police found on the kid, a BB gun.
It's a replica of a Beretta 92F. This is a picture of a real Beretta 92F. In the flash of an eye, could you tell the difference between those two?
No way. For Officer Ben Luna, it was a closer than close decision.
This could have been bad for this young kid. I'm so happy that I didn't have to pull the trigger.
If you were in that situation, would you have shot, or would you have not pulled the trigger, knowing very well that you could die that day because you didn't pull that trigger? Now, all contacts that civilians have with the police can all go very easily, but it's all a matter of, do you listen to what they tell you? Now, as a police officer, they always try to be nice to you, always try to be courteous to you because they're a reflection of the city. But it's when people don't listen that things get heated, and people think that everything is racial. Now, the police training, they tell you something that's called ask, tell, make. I'll give you an example of it. If you want someone to sit on the ground, you say, sir or ma'am, please sit on the ground. If they don't do it, you say, sit on the ground. If they don't do it, it's sit on the ground. If they don't do it again, then you put them on the ground. So, to reiterate, all you gotta do is just listen to what the police tell you, and you'll go good. If you just listen to what they say, and you didn't do anything wrong, then it will go good for you. All three main points that I've made have one thing in common: the actions of the individual. The actions that the individual being talked to or questioned or detained by the police, they're going to determine how that situation goes. If you don't listen, if you're aggressive, if you're combatant, if you're resisting, it is not going to go in your favor, and it is not because of a racial bias that the police have. It's just simply a matter of that's how they're trained to do things. Now, one thing that I was always told growing up by my family members in law enforcement, corrections, parole, etc., is this: every day when we go to work, there is one thing that matters most, and that is that we go home at the end of the day. And if we're in a situation we have to pull the trigger and we have to end someone's life because of it, then so be it. But they put themselves in that situation, and I am not going to die so they can go home. It's going to be me going home, not them. Thank you.